He made 3 fatal mistakes at the Christmas dinner table. First, he assumed my watch was worthless. Second, he believed I couldn't understand a word of Mandarin. And third, the most dangerous mistake of all, he thought a man like me had forgotten what respect truly means. You won't believe what happened next. But before we continue, if you love stories about karma, justice, and family secrets, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. My son-in-law, Derek Chen, had absolutely no idea that his smug little smirk across that elegantly set Christmas table had just triggered something he was completely unprepared for. His arrogant whisper to his father, delivered in rapid-fire Mandarin with that cocky confidence of someone who thinks they're speaking a secret language, would become the biggest regret of his privileged life. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is William Zhang, though everyone in our Vancouver neighborhood simply calls me Bill. I'm 63 years old. For the past 20 years, I've earned my living as a building superintendent. You know the type. I'm the guy who fixes your leaky faucets at 2 in the morning. I unclog your drain. I handle tenant complaints with patience. I shovel snow in the winter and maintain the gardens in summer. It's honest work. Good work. The kind of work that keeps my hands busy and my mind occupied, especially since my wife Grace passed away 8 years ago from cancer. Grace was my everything. 35 years of marriage, and I still reach for her side of the bed some mornings, forgetting for just a moment that she's gone. She was an elementary school teacher, one of those rare educators who truly loved every single child who walked into her classroom. She taught me that dignity isn't about your job title or your bank account. It's about how you treat people when nobody's watching. My daughter Emily is my whole world now. She always has been, but after losing Grace, that bond became even stronger. Emily is 30 years old and works as an emergency room nurse at Vancouver General Hospital. She inherited her mother's compassion, her strength, her ability to stay calm when everyone else is panicking. She works 12-hour shifts, comes home exhausted, but she never complains. Not once. She looks so much like Grace. Same dark eyes that seem to see right through you, same gentle smile, same way of tilting her head when she's really listening to you. Sometimes it hurts to look at her because the resemblance is so striking, but mostly it brings me comfort. Grace lives on through her. 3 years ago, Emily married Derek Chen. And I'll be completely honest with you, I had serious reservations from day one. It wasn't because Derek wasn't successful. The man is a corporate lawyer at one of those prestigious downtown firms that occupies the top 12 floors of a gleaming glass tower overlooking the harbor. He makes more in a month than I make in a year. He drives a BMW. He wears custom-tailored suits. He has all the external markers of success. It wasn't because he came from money either. His father, James Chen, owns a chain of luxury car dealerships across British Columbia. Bentley, Porsche, Ferrari, the kind of cars I've only ever seen in movies. His mother, Victoria, comes from old Hong Kong money, the kind of family wealth that spans generations. No, my reservations had nothing to do with Derek's success or his family's wealth. It was the way he looked at people like me. That particular expression he would get, that combination of pity and dismissal that wealthy people often mistake for politeness. The way his eyes would slide right past me at family gatherings, as if I were part of the furniture. The way he would shake my hand with that professional corporate grip, firm enough to seem respectful, but somehow completely devoid of any genuine warmth. The way he would ask about my work with that tone, that subtle condescension wrapped in false interest. How's the superintendent business, Bill? Still fixing toilets? Must be so rewarding, doing that kind of work. He never said anything overtly disrespectful. He was too well trained for that. Too polished. But I've lived long enough to recognize contempt, even when it's dressed up in expensive cologne and a charming smile. But Emily loved him. That's what mattered to me. She looked at Derek the way I used to look at Grace, with that mixture of admiration and affection and absolute certainty. Who was I to stand in the way of my daughter's happiness? Grace would have wanted me to support her, to give Derek a chance, to hope for the best. So I kept my concerns to myself. I smiled at the wedding. I gave my blessing. I welcomed Derek into our family with open arms and an open heart. The watch incident happened on Christmas Eve, 2023. Emily and Derek were hosting dinner at their Cole Harbor condominium, one of those ultra-modern luxury apartments with floor-to-ceiling windows that offer panoramic views of the harbor and the mountains beyond. The kind of place where the monthly maintenance fees probably equal my entire mortgage payment. Everything in that condo screamed money. Expensive furniture, original artwork on the walls, a kitchen with appliances that cost more than my truck. I had brought a gift for Derek that evening, something I'd been holding on to for nearly 40 years. Something precious. Something that carried the weight of my family's entire history. The dinner party was small and intimate, just family. Emily and Derek, of course. Derek's parents, James and Victoria, who arrived in their Bentley wearing clothes that probably cost more than I make in 6 months. Derek's younger sister, Sophia, a successful orthodontist, and her fiancé, Ryan, some kind of tech entrepreneur I could never quite understand. The guy was always talking about apps and algorithms and cryptocurrency. The moment I walked into that condo, I felt out of place. I was wearing my good sweater, the navy blue one that Grace had bought me for our last Christmas together. It was clean, presentable, perfectly appropriate. But standing in that gleaming living room surrounded by people in designer clothes, I suddenly felt like exactly what I was. A working-class man in a world of wealthy people. Derek greeted me at the door with his trademark professional handshake. "Bill, great to see you. Here, let me take your coat." His smile never quite reached his eyes. Emily, bless her heart, hugged me properly, the way daughters hug their fathers, with real warmth and genuine happiness. "Dad, I'm so glad you're here. Come on, everyone's in the living room." She linked her arm through mine and led me inside, and I could feel her tension. She knew. She always knew when I felt uncomfortable. James was holding court near the electric fireplace, telling some long-winded story about a customer who had tried to negotiate the price on a Ferrari. As if anyone negotiates on a Ferrari. His voice boomed through the room. Victoria stood beside him, laughing at precisely the right moments, holding a glass of white wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery bill. When James saw me, his voice got even louder. "Bill, the man who keeps Vancouver running. How's the superintendent business? Still keeping those buildings from falling apart?" There it was. That tone, jovial on the surface, almost friendly but underneath, that subtle implication that made superintendent sound like a punchline. Like my job was some kind of joke. Like I was some kind of joke. I've learned over the years to let these things slide. To smile and nod and not let it get to me. "Steady work," I replied calmly. "Always something that needs fixing somewhere. Keeps me busy." James clapped me on the shoulder a bit too hard. "Thank God for people like you, Bill. Society needs folks who are willing to do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. The dirty work, am I right?" I felt Emily stiffen beside me. She heard it too. The insult carefully wrapped in compliment paper. Dinner was elaborate. Derek had hired some trendy catering company that specialized in fusion cuisine. Tiny portions of food that looked beautiful but left me genuinely wondering where the actual meal was. Little artistic arrangements on oversized plates. Foams and gels and microgreens. Food as art, they call it. I call it still hungry after eating. The conversation flowed around me like a river around a rock. They talked about things I had no reference for. Stock portfolios and real estate investments. Vacation properties in Whistler and Palm Springs. The challenges of finding good help these days. Private school waiting lists for children who hadn't even been born yet. I nodded along, contributed when I could, asked polite questions. But mostly, I just watched Emily. Watched how she navigated between two worlds. Watched the subtle strain around her eyes. Watched how she would change her posture, her tone, her very energy depending on whether she was talking to me or to Derek's family. It broke my heart a little. After dessert, some deconstructed something or other that was more concept than actual food. Emily suggested we exchange gifts. That's when I pulled out the small wrapped box I'd been carrying in my jacket pocket all evening. It was wrapped simply, just plain paper and a ribbon, nothing fancy. But what was inside was worth more than everything in that condo combined. "Derek," I said, handing the box to him, "this is for you. It's not much, but I thought you might appreciate it." Emily's eyes immediately lit up. She knew what was in that box. I had told her about it years ago, after Grace passed away. She understood the significance. Derek took the box with that polite smile that people use when they're already mentally preparing to thank you for something they don't really want. The kind of smile that says, "I'll open this, say thank you, and immediately forget about it." "Thanks, Bill," he said. "You really didn't have to get me anything." I watched as he unwrapped it carefully, his movements precise and controlled. When he opened the box and saw the watch inside, his expression shifted slightly. A flicker of confusion, then something that looked almost like disappointment trying to hide itself. It was a watch, not a Rolex, not anything flashy or modern. Just an old watch with a leather strap, slightly worn, clearly vintage. The face was simple, clean, elegant. But to someone like Derek, someone who probably wore a $15,000 Audemars Piguet on his wrist, this watch looked exactly like what it appeared to be. Old, used, cheap. A watch you might find at a garage sale for $20. "Oh," Derek said, his voice carefully neutral. "Wow, a watch. This is very thoughtful, Bill. Thank you." He held it up briefly, examined it with the kind of polite interest you'd show to a child's drawing, then carefully placed it back in the box. I could see him already planning where to hide it in a drawer, never to be worn, never to be thought about again. Emily reached across the table and touched my hand. "Dad," she said softly, and I could hear everything she wasn't saying in that single word. "I love you. I'm sorry. Please don't be hurt." I smiled at her. "It's fine, sweetheart. I'm just happy to be here with family." The evening continued. More conversation. More wine. James launched into another story, this one about expansion plans for a new dealership in Victoria. Sophia showed everyone photos from her recent trip to Thailand on her phone. Ryan talked about some new blockchain technology that was going to revolutionize everything. And then it happened. Derek leaned over to his father, James, who was sitting beside him. They thought I was distracted watching Emily clear some plates from the table. They thought the ambient noise of conversation would cover their whispered exchange. But I heard every word. Derek spoke in rapid Mandarin, his voice low and laced with contempt. "Look at this garbage watch the old man gave me. He actually thinks this piece of trash is a gift. How pathetic. Probably bought it at some flea market for $10. What am I supposed to do with this? I wouldn't be caught dead wearing this cheap garbage. These working class people have no concept of quality. James chuckled quietly, also in Mandarin. Just smile and be polite. You know how these blue-collar types are? They think they're being generous. It's almost sad, really. Just put it in a drawer and forget about it. He'll never know the difference. Derek smirked. Maybe I should regift it to the building janitor. Seems more appropriate for someone of that level. They both laughed. Quiet, conspirator laughs. The kind of laughs that said we're better than him, we know it, and he's too dumb to even understand we're mocking him right to his face. I sat perfectly still. My face didn't change. I didn't react. I simply continued cutting my dessert, taking small bites, as if I hadn't heard a single word. But inside, something ancient and powerful stirred awake. Because, you see, Derek made 3 catastrophic assumptions. He assumed that watch was worthless. He assumed I didn't understand Mandarin. And he assumed that a man like me could be easily dismissed, easily disrespected, easily forgotten. He was spectacularly, catastrophically wrong about all 3. Let me tell you about that watch. My father's name was Zhang Wei. He came to Canada from Guangzhou in 1971 with $200 in his pocket, a single suitcase, and dreams that weighed more than everything else he owned combined. He didn't speak English. He had no connections, no safety net, nothing but determination and work ethic that bordered on superhuman. He took a job at the Port of Vancouver, manual labor, loading and unloading cargo ships, back-breaking work that paid minimum wage. He worked 12, 14, 16-hour shifts, slept in a boarding house with 5 other men, sent half his money back to my mother in China, saving the rest penny by penny. After 2 years, he had saved enough to bring my mother to Canada. After 5 years, he had saved enough to buy a tiny house in East Vancouver. After 10 years, he had worked his way up from dock worker to shift supervisor. And after 35 years, when he retired in 2006, he was the port operations manager, overseeing the entire container terminal operations. At his retirement dinner, the Port Authority presented him with a gift in recognition of his decades of service, his dedication, his leadership. They presented him with a watch, not just any watch. A 1973 Patek Philippe Calatrava, reference 3520, one of only 650 made, in pristine condition, worth, at current market value, somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000. My father wore that watch every single day for the rest of his life, through family dinners and graduations, through my wedding to Grace, through Emily's birth, through Grace's funeral. He wore it when he taught me how to fix a leaky faucet, how to change a tire, how to shake a man's hand properly and look him in the eye. When he died 4 years ago, at 86 years old, he left me 2 things. His old toolbox, worn and scarred from decades of use, and that watch. I've kept it in a safe deposit box ever since. Waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right reason to pass it on. I thought Derek might be that person. I thought perhaps giving him something of such profound value, such deep family history, might build a bridge between us, might show him that value isn't always about what something costs. That sometimes the most precious things don't come with designer labels. I was wrong, but his mistake, his cruel dismissal, his arrogant assumption that I was too ignorant and too poor to own anything of worth, that I couldn't possibly understand his language or his mockery, had just given me something far more valuable than any watch. It gave me clarity. It gave me purpose. It gave me the perfect opportunity to teach a lesson that Derek Chen would never, ever forget. I didn't say anything that night. Not a word. I finished my dessert. I complimented Emily on the dinner. I thanked Derek and Emily for their hospitality. I hugged my daughter goodbye and drove home to my small house in East Vancouver, and then I started making phone calls. The first call I made was to Professor Henry Liu. Henry is a friend I've known for 15 years, ever since he moved into one of my buildings with his wife. He's a professor of Chinese history at the University of British Columbia, specializing in diaspora studies and Chinese-Canadian immigration history. He's written 3 books. He's been featured in documentaries. He's one of the foremost experts in his field. He's also, incidentally, fluent in Mandarin, Cantonese, and 4 other Chinese dialects. We've played chess together every Thursday evening for the past decade. We've shared stories. We've become genuine friends. The kind of friends who show up when you need them, no questions asked. I called him at 10 o'clock that night. "Henry," I said when he answered, "I need a favor, and it's going to sound strange, but I need you to trust me." "Bill," his voice was warm, concerned. "Of course. What do you need?" "I need you to come to a dinner party at my daughter's house in 2 weeks, January 7th, and I need you to bring your academic credentials, your expertise, your professor voice. Can you do that?" There was a pause. Then, intrigued, "I assume there's a story here?" "There is," I confirmed. "A good one. I'll explain everything, but not yet. For now, I just need to know if you can be there." "Consider it done," he said without hesitation. "And Bill? Whatever this is about, I'm looking forward to it." The second call was to Dr. Michael Wu, a horologist and vintage watch expert who runs an exclusive auction house in downtown Vancouver. I'd met him 3 years ago when I'd had my father's watch appraised for insurance purposes. He'd spent 2 hours examining it with various magnifying tools and instruments, his hands trembling slightly with excitement. "Mr. Zhang," he'd said to me that day, "do you have any idea what you have here? This is museum quality, this is investment grade. This watch is worth a fortune." I'd thanked him, updated my insurance, and put the watch back in the safe deposit box. Now I was calling him at 10:30 at night. "Dr. Wu, this is William Zhang. We met a few years ago. You appraised my father's Patek Philippe?" "Mr. Zhang," his voice immediately brightened. "Of course I remember. The 73 Calatrava. How could I forget? That watch is extraordinary. What can I do for you?" "I need you to come to a dinner party," I said. "January 7th, and I need you to bring your expertise and your authentication equipment. Can you do that?" Another pause. Then, curious and clearly intrigued, "What's this about, if I may ask?" "Let's just say I need to educate someone about the true value of things," I replied. "Are you available?" "I wouldn't miss this for anything," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The third call was the hardest one. I called Derek. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice distracted. "Hello? Derek, it's Bill. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Oh, no, it's fine." His tone immediately shifted to that polite but disinterested register he always used with me. "What's up?" "I was thinking," I said carefully. "Emily mentioned you've been wanting to learn Mandarin for work, for your clients from China. Is that still something you're interested in?" There was a pause. "Yeah, actually. We have a lot of Chinese clients at the firm, and it would be helpful." "Why?" "I have a friend, Professor Henry Liu, who teaches Chinese language and culture at UBC. He's agreed to offer private tutoring sessions, very exclusive, very high level. I thought you might be interested. Consider it a belated Christmas gift." Another pause, longer this time. I could practically hear Derek's brain calculating, weighing whether this was something valuable or just another awkward gesture from his father-in-law. "Wait, really? That sounds actually useful. How much would this cost?" "It's taken care of," I said. "My gift to you. He's excellent. Studied at Beijing University. Worked with diplomats and executives. The best." "Wow, okay." Derek sounded genuinely surprised. "That's very generous, Bill. Thank you. When would this start?" "How about we discuss it over dinner? My place. Just family. January 7th. I'll have Professor Liu there to meet you, explain the program. What do you say?" I could hear the hesitation. Derek wasn't used to coming to my house. My small, working-class house in East Vancouver with its worn furniture and old appliances. But the prospect of high-level Mandarin tutoring, something that could actually benefit his career, was too tempting to pass up. "Yeah, sure. That sounds good. What time?" 6 o'clock, I said. "And Derek? This is important. Please bring everyone. Your parents, your sister. I'd really like the whole family there. I'm planning something special." Okay. I'll ask them. I'm sure they'll come." "Perfect," I said. "See you then. And Derek, thank you for the lovely Christmas dinner. Emily is lucky to have you." I hung up before he could respond. The next 2 weeks were busy. I cleaned my house from top to bottom. I called in a favor from a friend who ran a small catering business and arranged for proper food to be delivered. I set up my dining room table, the old wooden one that Grace and I had bought at a secondhand store 30 years ago, the one that had witnessed countless family meals and homework sessions and late-night conversations. I retrieved my father's watch from the safe deposit box and placed it in its presentation case. And I waited. January 7th arrived cold and clear. Vancouver in winter, all gray skies and rain, but that evening the weather held. I'd told Emily separately what I was planning, not all of it, but enough that she understood this dinner was important. She'd looked at me with those worried eyes, the same eyes as her mother, and asked, "Dad, what are you doing?" "Teaching a lesson, sweetheart," I'd replied. "One that needs to be taught. Trust me." Derek's family arrived at 6:05, all of them, dressed in what I suspected was their version of casual but still looked expensive. James and Victoria, Sophia and Ryan, Derek and Emily. They looked around my small living room with barely concealed surprise. The old couch, the worn carpet, the family photos in mismatched frames on the walls. I saw Victoria whisper something to James, a quick aside in Mandarin that I wasn't supposed to understand. So this is how the other half lives, rather charming in a rustic sort of way. I smiled and welcomed them warmly. "Thank you all for coming. Dinner will be ready soon, but first, I'd like you to meet some friends of mine." Professor Liu arrived at 6:15, exactly on time. He was wearing a sport coat and looked every inch the distinguished academic. He shook hands with everyone, his manner warm but professional. "Thank you for having me," he said to the group. "Bill has told me wonderful things about his family." Derek stepped forward, eager and polite. "Professor Liu, it's an honor. I understand you're going to be teaching me Mandarin. I have to say, I'm excited. My firm does a lot of business with Chinese companies, and I've been wanting to improve my language skills." Henry smiled. "Yes, I understand you already have some basic knowledge. You speak some Mandarin?" Derek puffed up slightly. "Yes, actually. I studied it in college, and I use it occasionally with clients. I'd say I'm conversational. Conversational, Henry repeated, his expression neutral. That's excellent. Having a foundation will help tremendously. Dr. Wu arrived at 6:20, carrying a black leather case. He was a small man in his 50s, precise and meticulous, with the careful movements of someone who handles priceless objects regularly. Mr. Zhang, he said warmly, shaking my hand. It's good to see you again. I made introductions. Dr. Michael Wu, he's a horologist and vintage watch expert, one of the best in North America. He's here because I want to show all of you something very special tonight. Derek's expression shifted slightly, confusion mixed with wariness. What do you mean? All in good time, I said. Let's eat first. Dinner was simple but good. Roasted chicken, vegetables, mashed potatoes. Real food that filled you up. Grace's recipes, prepared by the caterers to her exact specifications that I'd kept in a worn notebook. As we ate, I watched Derek and his family, saw how they relaxed slightly, how the food and the informal atmosphere lowered their guards. We made small talk. Henry shared fascinating stories about Chinese immigration to Canada, about the railroad workers and the head tax, about the discrimination and the resilience. He was captivating, erudite, the kind of speaker who makes history come alive. James asked him questions, clearly impressed despite himself. You teach at UBC? What department? Asian Studies, Henry replied. I also direct the Center for Chinese Research. We work with governments, corporations, and cultural institutions throughout the Pacific Rim. Victoria perked up. That sounds very prestigious. Henry smiled modestly. I've been fortunate in my career. Derek was practically glowing, clearly thrilled at the prospect of being tutored by someone of such obvious expertise and status. After dinner, after the plates were cleared, I stood up. Everyone, thank you for coming tonight. I have something I need to show you, and something I need to say. Derek, would you please bring me the gift I gave you at Christmas? I believe you brought it, as I requested. Derek looked confused but nodded. He retrieved a small bag from the hallway and pulled out the watch box. Yeah, I have it here. To be honest, Bill, I wasn't sure why you wanted me to bring it. I took the box and opened it, removing the watch. I held it up to the light, letting everyone see it. This watch, I said quietly, was given to me by my father. Dr. Wu stood and moved closer, his professional interest clearly piqued. My father came to Canada with nothing, I continued. He worked on the docks for 35 years. He started as a laborer, loading ships in all weather, doing back-breaking work for minimum wage. He saved every penny. He brought my mother over. He bought a house. He worked his way up through determination and integrity until he became the port operations manager. Emily was watching me with tears already forming in her eyes. She'd heard this story before, but never like this, never in this context. When he retired, I went on, the Port Authority gave him this watch as recognition for his service. My father wore this watch every day for the rest of his life. It witnessed our family's entire story, every important moment. When he died, he left it to me with one instruction. Pass it on when you find someone worthy, someone who understands its true value. I looked directly at Derek. I thought you might be that person, Derek. I gave this to you at Christmas because I wanted to welcome you fully into our family. I wanted to share our legacy with you. Derek shifted uncomfortably, clearly not understanding where this was going. Dr. Wu, I said, turning to the expert, would you mind examining this watch and telling everyone what it is? Wu took the watch carefully, almost reverently. He pulled out a jeweler's loupe, a small UV light, and several other tools from his case. He spent 5 full minutes examining the watch in complete silence. The only sound in the room was his occasional quiet hum of interest. Finally, he looked up. This, he said, his voice filled with professional excitement, is a 1973 Patek Philippe Calatrava, reference 3520. This particular reference was produced for only 3 years, from 1972 to 1975. Total production was approximately 650 pieces worldwide. He held the watch up, pointing to specific details. The case is 18-karat yellow gold. The movement is the caliber 177 mechanical hand wound movement, 27 jewels, which was considered revolutionary for its time. The condition is extraordinary. Near mint, the serial numbers match. The original papers and presentation case would make this even more valuable, but even without them, based on recent auction results, this watch is worth between $250,000 and $300,000. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Derek's face went from tan to white to gray. James and Victoria looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Sophia's mouth literally fell open. $300,000? Victoria whispered. Wu nodded. At minimum, possibly more to the right collector. Patek Philippe Calatravas from this era, in this condition, are highly sought after. This is not just a watch. This is a museum piece. This is an investment-grade timepiece. This is history. He handed the watch back to me with both hands, the way you'd hand someone a newborn baby. I looked at Derek. His eyes were wide, his hands trembling slightly. Derek, I said quietly, do you remember what you said about this watch on Christmas Eve? His face went even whiter. Bill, I don't know what you mean. I switched to Mandarin. My Mandarin. Perfect, fluent, native speaker Mandarin with a Guangzhou accent, exactly like my father's. You called it garbage. You said it was trash from a flea market. You said you wouldn't be caught dead wearing cheap garbage like this. You said maybe you should re-gift it to the building janitor because that's more appropriate for someone of that level. The room exploded. What? Emily gasped. Derek, Victoria hissed. Tell me he's lying. But Derek couldn't speak. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I continued in Mandarin, my voice calm but firm. You assumed I couldn't understand you. You assumed that, because I'm a building superintendent, because I fix toilets and unclog drains, because I come from working-class roots, that I must be ignorant, stupid. Beneath you, James stood up. Derek, is this true? Derek finally found his voice. Dad, I can explain. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what it was. I didn't mean any disrespect. You didn't mean disrespect? I asked, still in Mandarin. You called me pathetic. You mocked me in a language you thought I couldn't understand. You laughed about my ignorance, my poverty, my supposed lack of taste or knowledge. Emily was crying now. Derek, how could you? Professor Liu stood up. His voice was quiet but commanding. Mr. Chen, I'm curious. You said earlier that you're conversational in Mandarin, but you spoke to your father in what you believed was a private language, a code that Mr. Zhang couldn't understand. What does that say about your character? What does that say about respect? Derek looked at Henry, then back at me. Bill, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I judged you. I was wrong. I held up the watch. Do you know why I still wanted to give you this? Even after hearing what you said? Because I believe that people can learn, that they can change, that they can grow. I put the watch back in its box and closed the lid. But now you have to earn it. Derek looked up at me, confused. Here are my conditions, I said, still in Mandarin. 1. You will take Mandarin lessons from Professor Liu, real lessons, twice a week for the next year. You will learn not just the language, but the culture, the history, the philosophy. You will learn what it means to be Chinese, to carry that heritage, to respect it. Derek nodded frantically. Yes, of course. 2. I continued. Every 4th Saturday, you will work with me in the buildings I maintain. You will fix leaky faucets. You will unclog drains. You will meet tenants and hear their stories. You will understand what working-class life is really like, not as an observer, but as a participant. Derek's eyes widened. You want me to work with you? That's right, I confirmed. Physical labor, for no pay, because I want you to understand what dignity of work means, what it meant to my father, what it means to me, what it should mean to you. 3, I said, you will apologize to everyone in this room, in English and in Mandarin. You will acknowledge your prejudice, your arrogance, your disrespect, and you will mean it. The room was absolutely silent. And 4, I finished, if you complete these conditions, if you truly learn these lessons, then and only then will I give you this watch. Not because of what it's worth in dollars, but because you'll have earned the right to carry its legacy forward. I looked around the room, at Emily, who was watching me with a mixture of pride and tears, at Henry, who had a small smile on his face, at Dr. Wu, who was nodding in approval, at James and Victoria, who looked shocked and ashamed. But mostly I looked at Derek. Do you accept these terms? Derek stood there for a long moment. I could see the war happening inside him, his pride fighting against his shame, his arrogance, battling his recognition of how badly he'd miscalculated. Finally, he bowed. A proper bow from the waist, the kind you give an elder you've deeply disrespected. Yes, he said in Mandarin. I accept. And I'm sorry, yi, I'm so sorry. Yi, grandfather. A term of respect. A term of family. It was a start. The dinner party broke up after that. People left in 2s and 3s, subdued and thoughtful. Victoria apologized to me in halting Mandarin before they left, tears in her eyes. James shook my hand properly for the first time, meeting my eyes. Emily stayed behind after everyone else had gone. She helped me clean up the dishes, working in comfortable silence the way we always did. Dad, she finally said, that was incredible. I've never seen anything like that, but why? Why are you still willing to give him the watch after what he said? I thought about that for a moment, drying a plate slowly. Because your mother would have wanted me to, I said finally. Grace always believed that people deserved second chances, that the best in people often needs to be called forth, not assumed. And because you love him, sweetheart, if you see something worth loving in Derek, then I have to trust that judgment. I have to give him the opportunity to become the man you see in him. She hugged me then, hard and long. Thank you, she whispered. That was almost a year ago now. Derek has kept every single condition. He takes lessons with Professor Henry twice a week. His Mandarin has improved dramatically. More than that, he's learned about Chinese history, about the discrimination our community faced, about the strength and resilience and dignity of Chinese immigrants who built lives here through sheer determination. He comes with me every 4th Saturday. At first, he was terrible at basic repairs, all thumbs and no instinct. But he's learning. He's actually pretty good now at fixing leaky faucets and patching drywall. The tenants love him, especially Mrs. Kowalski and 4B, who still can't believe that the fancy lawyer in the expensive suit comes to fix her toilet. Last month, Derek gave me a gift for my 64th birthday. A photo album. A new one. Professionally bound. Inside were photos of my father at the docks, photos of my parents' wedding, photos of Grace and me on our wedding day, photos of Emily growing up, and at the end, new photos. Derek and Emily's wedding, family dinners, the two of them in work clothes, helping me paint an apartment. Derek with Mrs. Kowalski, both of them laughing. Derek at his Mandarin lessons, focused and serious. The last photo was of Derek wearing the watch, standing next to my father's photo from his retirement dinner. The same watch, 2 generations apart, representing the same values. Chuan Cheng, Derek had written below the photo in careful Chinese characters. Legacy. I cried when I saw it. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Last week, I finally gave Derek the watch. We had a small ceremony, just Emily, Derek, Henry, and me. I placed it on Derek's wrist and fastened the clasp. This watch is yours now, I said. Not because of what it costs, but because you've earned it. You've learned what it represents. Dignity, respect, the value of honest work, the importance of family, the weight of legacy. Derek looked down at the watch on his wrist, and I saw tears in his eyes. I'll honor it, he said in perfect Mandarin. I promise you, yay, I'll honor it. My father would have approved. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't the fastest one. Sometimes you wait, you watch, you teach. And sometimes you take something that was dismissed as garbage and turn it into a bridge between generations, between cultures, between who we are and who we're capable of becoming. Derek still has a long way to go. We all do. But he's learning. He's trying. He shows up every Saturday ready to work, ready to learn, ready to be better. And that watch, that $300,000 piece of history, it's where it belongs now, on the wrist of someone who understands that its true value isn't measured in dollars. Its value is measured in the legacy it carries, the dignity of work, the love of family, the respect for those who came before us and built the foundations we stand on. The watch keeps perfect time, just like my father knew it would. 51 years now and counting, still running, still marking moments, still witnessing the building of something that lasts. That's what makes it valuable. That's what makes anything valuable. Not the price tag, the legacy. And that's a lesson you can't buy at any price.